Welcome to the 2021 Brisbane Anzac Day Parade. 106 years on from the landings at Gallipoli, today we gather to reflect on that Anzac legacy. The qualities of mateship, endurance, courage and sacrifice. It's about remembering those who never came home. It's about honouring those who have served and the many who continue to do so in the name of the country. It's about saying we will never forget. Vietnam veteran Kerry Gallagher leads the Anzac Day Brisbane Parade Committee. And Kerry, after last year's event couldn't happen for only the second time in its history due to coronavirus, what does it mean to you to be here today for the march?
This is a fantastic day, Craig. The veterans have been waiting for this. As you say, it didn't happen last year, and only once before since 1916 has it not happened. This is a really important day, perhaps even a vital day for Australia, for the Brisbane community, and certainly for the veterans. It's a great day. Look at it. Beautiful.
Stunning. You can't picture it any better. And ladies and gentlemen, 2021 is an extra special year for the Royal Australian Air Force, which marks its 100th anniversary. Let's take a look at its operations, based out of RAF Base Amberley, the country's largest airbase.
On this Anzac Day, it's important to remember those who have gone before us and those who have fallen in action. We've had 11,191 people killed in operations in the Air Force, and we've got 3,143 people still missing, including that number 18 pilots still missing in action from the Korean War. The Air Force doesn't forget its own. We deployed a team to West Irian, where we attempted to find the crew remains of a Catalina that crashed in 1943. When the Air Force was formed in 1921, we were about 151 personnel all up. We had one base and an aircraft depot, and in theory more aircraft than we had people. The Air Force in essence had three different roles in the Second World War. One was to support the Commonwealth effort, the Allied effort against the Axis powers, and we did that through the Empire Air Training Scheme. At the same time, we had an Air Force back here that was responsible for the defence of Australia and the operations in the Southwest Pacific and Southeast Asia. And the third component was the troops who were trained through the Empire Air Training Scheme, who went to the Royal Air Force and flew mainly in Bomber Command, but also Coastal Command, Transport Command and Fighter Command during the war. Post-World War II, the Korean War enabled us to start evolving. We introduced our first jet combat aircraft, the MEIER in service in the Korean War. After that, our roles broadened. By the time Vietnam came around, we were a fairly balanced force. We had modern fighters, the Mirages, we had modern strike aircraft, the Canberra, we had airlift of C-130As, the Hercules aircraft, and Neptune maritime patrol aircraft. And by the time the first Gulf War came around, we had Hornets in the squadrons as fighters and strike aircraft, F-111s and Hercules and P-3 maritime patrol aircraft. By the time we concluded the last operations to the Middle East, which was Operation Okra, we had deployed Super Hornets, our new tankers, the KC-30s, and the Wedgetail airborne warning and controlling aircraft. So the roles had broadened, the equipment had broadened, and the skills that our personnel had to maintain and operate those aircraft had also broadened. At the same time, we started deploying non-aircraft units to the Middle East. We deployed a radar unit to Afghanistan for about 2 years, where we controlled half of the airspace over Afghanistan. We deployed our medical people for aeromedical evacuation, either back to Australia when our soldiers were wounded in Afghanistan. And at the same time, we had all the combat support elements you would expect to see at a modern air base, just simply overseas. We've always done some degree of emergency aid, basically from the 60s onwards, but in the recent years, with the advent of the C-17 and extremely specialised and well-trained personnel, we've done a variety of other tasks. Domestically, we've provided assistance to COVID. We do support to bushfire assist. We move firefighters in bushfire assist from one side of the country to the other with their vehicles. We also have a capability where we can do aeromedical evacuation. In particular, the deployable medical facilities that we operate are a sight to behold. We'll start with 3 or 4 empty football fields, that size area, dead flat. They turn up, and the personnel in that unit, a couple of hundred people in that unit, will then erect a tent hospital that can do surgery. They're self-deployable. We can take those anywhere in the world in the back of our aircraft. But in the Southwest Pacific, we spend a lot of time there. Vanuatu, Fiji, all the island nations where we go in and provide medical support. We'll provide some degree of engineering support, help operate their airfields, and provide the first response in many cases. That allows the Army and the Navy to bring the heavier support up in a week or two's time after we've gone there and done the initial triage, whether it's casualties, evacuation, or physical reconstruction or physical repairs. Without a doubt, the biggest change, besides the technology in the Air Force over the last 100 years, has been the cultural aspects. The Air Force is a very, very different organisation to what I joined. We're a much more robust, much more diverse organisation. Nowadays, all the jobs in Air Force are open to anybody who wishes to pursue that particular career, irrespective of gender, race, religion. At the same time, it's made the Air Force a much more robust, much more effective and much more representative of the Australian nation, and it puts us in a better place to push out for the next 100 years. Our history gives us our bedrock of where we've come from and points us in the direction where we've got to go. Our centenary is an important year, but it's just another step on the way to the next century.
Whether it be at home or abroad, today we honour those who serve. And you can feel the significance of this Anzac Day. People gathering like they couldn't last year. Those in uniform marching with those who have come before them. And a big crowd lining the streets of the Brisbane CBD to say thank you. Joining me in commentary is Alan Callaghan from the National Servicemen's Association. And Alan, you can feel not just that significance, but we are matched with a magnificent day for today's parade.
The first parade I saw was 1946 with my father, and then as a schoolboy, as a national serviceman and as a journalist, the only one I missed was last year because of the flu epidemic.
We're back in 2021 and you can see the thousands that are lining the streets here in the Brisbane CBD. The city has a proud military history, being the home of the Army's 7th Brigade, RAF Amberley, and of course the Navy's HMAS MORETON. You'll see members of the Royal Australian Air Force lead this year's march down Adelaide Street, with of course the RAF marking its centenary. In picture at the moment, some of the historical troop that you can see, I guess demonstrating the uniform of old, you might say, Alan.
Yes, it is. The cavalry have always played a vital role in warfare and in peace, right stretching back beyond the Romans. Always the cavalry.
It most certainly is. And to see this crowd after coronavirus cancelled last year's parade, it warms the heart as we know what it means to those veterans who are marching and those who are serving today.
Service mounted contingent. We're the first to salute His Excellency as they pass
the first to salute His Excellency, the Governor of Queensland, Paul de Jersey, will be the QPS mounted unit.
In the stirrups marking a fallen comrade. Following behind that is the Queensland Mounted Infantry Historical Troop.
This is one of our oldest units, the Mounted Police. They served right throughout the whole of Eastern Australia virtually, and then as each state was formed, they became a state police force.
Behind the QPS contingent, you can see just coming into shot the riderless horse. With boots reversed in the stirrups, it symbolises fallen soldiers. It has become tradition in leading Anzac Day marches and is known as the Lone Charger. Notice the emu plume and the band of the slouched hats of the historical troop, dating back to 1860, of course, keeping one of the oldest traditions of Australian military units alive.
Yeah, this is so Australian, the plume. It goes back to when they served in the West during the shearers' strike, and to amuse themselves, they used to go chase emus, and they'd reach down and pluck one of the feathers and wear it in their hat, and that's where the tradition began.
Yeah, isn't it incredible when you think going back to the late 1800s, 1890s for the shearers' strike? And the Australian Army Band, you might be able to hear them in full flight as they make their way down Adelaide Street, followed by the flags of Australia and New Zealand.
That really does mark the close association that we've always had with New Zealand in war and in peace.
And of course, New Zealand forming a big part of the Anzac legacy. I'll bring into commentary Stuart MATTNER, Wing Commander from the Royal Australian Air Force, to introduce the Parade Commander for 2021. Stuart.
Morning, Craig. Morning, Alan. Pleasure to be here. This morning we've got the Parade Commander is Group Captain Ross Magno. He's one of our senior officers at Combat Support Group. An exceptional mentor for me, actually, personally. I know his wife, Karen, is in the crowd today. She'd be very proud. She's an ex-serving member also.
And for you on Anzac Day, what goes through your mind?
Oh, plenty. You know, I think it's a case of, it's very much a sense of sacrifice for the veterans, those that have come before us, those that never returned. It's also a sense of commitment to service. That is absolutely prevalent in anyone marching today, but also a real sense of gratitude. We love marching in front of the population, in front of the community that support us. We absolutely feel that, certainly in Brisbane and Queensland. I'm a Brisbane boy and I may be a little biased, but I feel this from Queensland. Everywhere I've served in Queensland, the support has been amazing, so real privilege.
And in the taxis that you see coming down Adelaide Street, they are carrying World War II veterans, and how important that they can be a part of today's march. It was on the 3rd of September in 1939 that the then Prime Minister Robert Menzies addressed the country to say, "Fellow Australians, it is my melancholy duty to inform you officially that in consequence of a persistence by Germany in her invasion of Poland, Great Britain has declared war upon her, and that as a result, Australia is also at war. No harder task can fall to the lot of a democratic leader than to make such an announcement." Nearly 1 million Australian men and women served in what was going to become World War II. And they are quite astonishing figures, especially given the country's population at the time was only around 7 million. Everyone knew someone involved, and almost no one's life was left untouched by the conflict. And it was during this period that the Australian mainland also came under direct enemy attack for the first time in its history, Alan.
Yes, the Japanese had submarines up and down the east coast. They attacked Newcastle. They sent a midget submarines into Sydney. I'm just going to go make reference to you about how many served. If you look at my own family, my grandfather, my father, and 4 of my uncles all served in active service in World War II, and they all came home.
They all came home?
They all came home, yes.
And that's remarkable in itself, Alan.
It is.
And for you, Wing Commander Stuart MATTNER, that history of service, is it strong in your family?
It is, it certainly is, yeah. I've got 2 grand-uncles, actually, one on my mother's side, one on my father's side. That was really the catalyst for me to join up, actually. I went to high school and school through southern Brisbane and at 8 Mile Plains there. G'day to everyone out there today. And look, you know, that always the photos were up on the wall of my great uncle Duncan and Uncle Les, and their service was really what got me in.
Yeah, the catalyst to you joining the Air Force.
Absolutely, yeah.
I know when I was called up for national service, my father said to me, "I'm not happy about the need for something like this," but he said, "At least you'll have better training than we got."
And you'll see Australian War Widows Queensland. The organisation empowers, supports, inspires and celebrates war widows, carers and their families. The organisation was established in 1947 to protect the interests of war widows and to provide friendship, comfort and that enduring support to its members right across the state.
Yeah, Craig, it's important to recognise that Defence has still got such close ties with Legacy, with the War Widows. We've got many legatees within our ranks. We know the sacrifice of these individuals through war, through when their partners and family are away. They're what keeps serving members upright and breathing, is what I would say on the day-to-day, and they're a remarkable bunch of people.
Well, you talk about that, Stuart, and in fact you were serving when one of your children were born. You were in Afghanistan at the time.
I was, yes. Young Flynn, the 5-year-old, 5 years ago, thereabouts, he was born here in Brisbane, and I was on my last week in Afghanistan at the time. My wife Cherie was amazing, along with her best friend Tanya, and what they did was amazing. That was pure sacrifice from them while I'm out and about.
And let's talk about Legacy, one of Australia's oldest and most trusted charities. The story of its origins in the foxholes of Pozières in France in 1916, where one dying digger is said to have asked his mate to look after his missus and kids back home. The reply, we will look after them, and they have been doing ever since. Legacy Brisbane has cared for the families of the fallen in Brisbane since 1928. Today it supports more than 6,200 family members of fallen and injured veterans across southeast, central and western Queensland, and many of those are marching today.
Well, having grown up just post-war, at school we had quite a lot of legacy kids who are being looked after, attending our school.
And look at that, the Mackay North State High Marching Band. It's one of the largest school marching bands in Australia. And they have annually fundraised to be here for Anzac Day. They've been doing so for more than 26 years. Let's take a listen. Screen now, you can see the Defence nurses, and they were first recruited in 1899 for the Boer War, as you can see on their banner, to support the troops and provide health training. The Army Nursing Service itself was raised in 1902 and has served in all theatres of war. The notions of patient care and comfort remain at the core of professional military nursing, despite, well, I guess you could say, the often unfamiliar and even hostile surroundings. They are deployed on peacekeeping, humanitarian operations, providing care to local military personnel and civilians in countries that have been ravaged by war or natural disasters. It's a similar story with the Australian Army Medical Women's Services as well. Currently, there are more than 600 nurses attached to Joint Health Command in the ADF. Reserves with civilian jobs account for around half of that total, and male nurses about 40%. The Women's Royal Army Corps, as here you can see marching in green. This unit was formed in 1951. At that time, to help boost numbers post-World War II and during the Korean War, they first served overseas in Singapore. And the Women's Auxiliary Australian Air Force and the Women's Royal Australian Air Force Branch Association, as here you can see, taking a salute from the Governor. It wasn't until 1977 that the members of the Women's Royal Australian Air Force were transferred to the RAAF. And the Atomic Ex-Servicemen's Association marching behind them. I just ran into John, who was marching with this group not far from where we are in Adelaide Street earlier. He was talking about the importance of the day, what it means to him to be able to be here with his colleagues and comrades, to catch up once more, as well as the tradition returns for 2021 of the Anzac Day Parade.
It's not often realised, Craig, that how many atomic tests we actually had in Australia. Most of them were either held by or superintended by the armed forces. This is why we have the Atomic Ex-Servicemen.
The association is for veterans who have been acknowledged as participants in the British nuclear testing program on Australian territory dating during the 1950s. And following years. And there is the Kiwi on the banner of the New Zealand contingent. And we couldn't be here marking Anzac Day without our friends and colleagues from across the ditch. Members of the New Zealand Armed Forces have served in World War I, World War II, as well as the Malayan Emergency, the Korean, Vietnam War, Gulf Wars, in East Timor, and also in Afghanistan.
I have to confess, my mum was a Kiwi. She was born in Gisborne. I wonder if that means I could flee to New Zealand for refuge.
Why would you want to leave on a day like today, though, Alan?
Yeah, you're quite right.
Look, the bonds we share with New Zealand, with the New Zealand military forces, is unbreakable. You know, through our shared military history, but socially also and culturally. You know, from day one when I joined the Australian Defence Force, I had a Kiwi next to me. Michael Chalmers was his name, and during operations, during exercises, I've had New Zealanders, you know, to work alongside, and they've always been a real pleasure. They've been fantastic, and you know, every Kiwi that I know is great. I've actually married a Kiwi, and yeah, I've got a wonderful Kiwi family at home also.
Well, very close ties to New Zealand today. And New Zealand will, I see, withdraw the last of its military personnel from Afghanistan in May, concluding a deployment that has lasted 2 decades. Of course, in recent weeks, Australia has also announced it will withdraw troops from Afghanistan by September. 10 New Zealand soldiers were killed on duty while in Afghanistan. And this is the band from St Joseph's College in Gregory Terrace, Spring Hill, not far from where we are, just to the south of King George Square in the Brisbane CBD.
These school bands have been a feature of the Anzac Day Parade Brisbane from the outset.
The Terrace Band have been a part of Anzac commemorations for many years now.
It's not often realised that the Anzac Day had its birth in Brisbane in 1916 and was almost immediately adopted by every other state.
To the Royal Australian Air Force, marking its centenary in 2021. Wing Commander Stuart Mattner in commentary with us today.
Here they are. This is who I've been waiting for. We've got Group Captain Webb. He's at the front there. He's actually my direct boss. Great form there from Sir, and leading the 23 Squadron contingent is Wing Commander Paul Murray. He's the commanding officer of number 23 Squadron. Important to note also, we've got Flight Lieutenant Portia Cooper. She's the RAF ensign bearer today. She missed out on the Centenary Parade down in Canberra a few weeks ago, but as proud as punch to be here today.
And of course, 23 Squadron, known as the City of Brisbane Squadron, it has the city's coat of arms as its emblem. Dauntless by name and nature, they say. And what sort of role does it serve at RAF Base Amberley?
Yeah, pretty much it's the airbase as a weapons system. There's over 375 permanent staff at 23 Squadron at RAF Base Amberley. There's 36 different categories, and what they do is an impeccable job.
Behind 23 Squadron is 35 Squadron. You can see their banner just in front of you now.
Yeah, we've got Wing Commander Scott Egan up front here with Squadron Warrant Officer Flight Sergeant Kennard. They are within Air Mobility Group's number 84 wing. They operate the C-27J Spartan. They go anywhere. You wonder where they can go anywhere, and they have been many places in recent years. If you think of a natural disaster, 35 Squadron have been there.
Yeah, so bushfire assist, I know last year,
Absolutely.
That was a massive contingent from Amberley was there.
Indeed it was, and sterling effort from them.
Yeah, the Spartan aircraft, airlift, air and medical evacuation, search and rescue, parachuting of troops. We have 36 Squadron, which operates the heavy lift aircraft. So that's the Globemaster, Stuart.
It is indeed, yes, our Big Bird. It's one of Air Force's most recognisable and relied upon squadrons. You know, they've been operating, I think, since about 1942, continuously. Obviously, 5 decades plus or thereabouts of Hercules operations, and then transitioning to the C-17 Globemaster. Everyone, when they see that Globemaster, they'll know what it is. I know the Army talks about its M1 Abrams tanks. Our Globemasters can carry them.
Not that there's any healthy competition.
Not at all.
Between the services.
We love them.
I'll pay that one.
And the heavy lift Systems Program Office
Yeah.
also walking,
That's
marching
right.
down Adelaide Street here with number 36 Squadron.
They're also represented. There needs to be agencies that provide sustainment and support for those aircraft platforms and every system that goes with them. They are very complex. They're cutting edge. And Heavy Airlift Systems Program Office is one of those. I've had the pleasure of working 7 years of my career within Systems Program Offices, and what they do with their enterprise agreement with the defence industry is crucial to keep those aircraft flying.
There was an Army captain in that last group with the RAF group. What would his role be?
Oh, he'd be a liaison officer, I imagine,
yes.
Alan. So, yeah, crucial to get the job done as one joint force.
We just saw the banner of 33 Squadron go past us as well. Now, that's involving with air-to-air refuelling, aren't there, 33 Squadron members?
That's their primary role. They operate the KC-30A multi-role tanker transport. I've got a lot of very close friends within 33 Squadron. Like I said, wherever we go, we need long legs, and this is what 33 Squadron gives us. They're always a welcome sight also when you are on operations, because it means that it's an airbridge home. They represent a home for us when you see them. They don't only do air-to-air refueling, they also do personnel and cargo transport.
Just to see air-to-air refueling in action, it is so precision-based.
It is. It is. It's a flying Bowser at many kilometres per hour, many knots, as you can imagine. It's a precise art. 33 Squadron, the number of clearances they've got with coalition, allied aircraft, not only Australian, obviously, but it's amazing what they can achieve.
There's an old joke, it's actually coffee.
On ABC TV and streaming online through abc.net.au/Brisbane. We are live with the Anzac Day Parade for 2021 down Adelaide Street in the heart of the Brisbane CBD.
Yeah, I think we've got number 1 CCS here.
That's the Combat Communications Squadron.
That
Stuart.
is, yes. And in fact, while we've got Air Commodore Tyler on camera, it's important to note she's taking the salute alongside His Excellency the Governor de Jersey. Air Commodore Tyler is the most senior permanent ADF officer in Queensland, in fact. She's an inspirational leader. She is my two-up within Combat Support Group. And yeah, she'll be sorely missed at the end of the year when she goes into her next role. But she looks like she's enjoying the day as it is, and seeing all of those blue uniforms up front.
And for Combat Communications Squadron, can you give us a sense as to the work that they do?
Yeah, look, they're crucial. We need resilient cyberspace networks to get the job done in this leading edge Air Force and ADF. And they provide assured network operations capabilities. What they can bring to the table is connectivity across the joint force, and they're an amazing element to have alongside.
And isn't it wonderful to see so many people paying their respects to those who are serving today in the Royal Australian Air Force, which marks its centenary in 2021.
Indeed.
I think we should award the people of Brisbane an award for the turnout.
Indeed, it's a fantastic turnout.
Yes.
As we see on camera here, we've got Wing Commander Jody New. He's leading up a contingent of Combat Support Group, number 96 Wing and Health Support Wing elements, along with number 87 Squadron, our intelligence unit. They've got detachments all over the country. We're lucky to have one at RAF Base Amberley supporting combat support. But yes, Combat Support Group, 96 Wing are there for our permanent air bases across Australia, and the headquarters is thankfully at RAF Base Amberley.
The largest airbase in the country, also home to fighter aircraft. 11 is when there should be a flyover of a Super Hornet. We have the Queensland Irish Pipe Band coming into view now. Formed in Brisbane in 1925, wears the ancient Urquhart tartan as part of the iconic green uniform. The band regularly competes overseas as well, and hopes to again once allowed. And here we have the City of Brisbane Squadron Association. for the City of Brisbane Squadron Association. Battle honours include New Guinea, Eastern Waters Pacific during the Second World War, and Borneo as well. Here we have the RAF Airfield Defence Association of Australia, awarded the Ground Combat Badge by the Chief of the Air Force in 2014 for their role in all conflicts from World War I to present. The badge takes pride of place at the centre of the association banner. Members of the association, which was formed in the late 80s, served in World War II in Borneo, South Vietnam, Cambodia, Kuwait, Iraq and Afghanistan. And here's the number 2 squadron. Formed in Egypt in 1916, then sent to the Western Front in France and Belgium.
Yeah, this unit is the most highly decorated unit of the Royal Australian Air Force. Still serving now. They've got the E-7A Wedgetail Airborne Early Warning and Control aircraft out of Williamtown. I've got close links with number 2 squadron. That's who my great uncle and his crew were serving with when they were shot down in 1943 in the Arafura Sea north of Darwin. And it was with the 2 squadron aircraft that he and his 4 mates are still missing in action.
Still missing in action.
Still missing in action. Yeah.
That's that family history we talk about with the military.
That's right.
The 3 Squadron Association. Now, of course, it was formed in Victoria in September of 1916, moved to England for training before deploying to France the following year. The squadron aircraft were used for bombing and reconnaissance in support of British, Canadian Anzac forces. And by the end of hostilities, the unit was regarded as the best Allied reconnaissance squadron in the war.
It's amazing to think that was only 14 years after the first flight by the Wright brothers.
Yeah, isn't it incredible?
Yes.
When you consider that history, Alan. And here's the 9 Squadron Association. 9 was formed in 1939, operating the Seagull Mark V and Walrus aircraft from warships in many naval theatres of World War II. The number 35 Squadron coming into view now down Adelaide Street.
Have you ever seen one of those take off?
No.
Do an emergency takeoff simulated? It's absolutely phenomenal.
Also joining the 35 Squadron Association, the RAF Transport Flight Vietnam Association. At one stage during the Vietnam War, they were flying helicopters, but then in the late 80s, the squadron returned to a solely fixed-wing transport role. Behind the Laurie Young concert band, which you might be able to hear in the background, is the number 38 Squadron Association. Established in 1943 and was operational until 2018 under the motto, equal to the task.
Yeah, equal to the task indeed. Fantastic unit. Sad to see them disbanded, but I'm sure that they'll be back.
And here we have 463, 467 Squadron of the RAF.
Yeah, representing the Lancaster squadrons. Incredible history and sacrifice in support of the Allied war effort in the European theatre.
Followed by the 460 Squadron as well.
Yeah, another one of those ex-Lancaster units. Fantastic to see these family members marching on behalf of their ancestors. 460 is actually it's been reinstated. It has been for 10 years. It's one of our intelligence units, part of our Air Force's Air Warfare Centre down in Canberra. A little unknown, but there you go. Those that want to look at it can look it up. And
462, 466 squadrons, the association, the Pathfinder Force, the RAF Beaufort Squadrons Association, the Queensland branch, and also the RAF Police Association, keeping everybody in the RAF honest, I guess you could say, Stuart.
Absolutely. We love the MPs. Yeah, we love having them about. We make sure we're not getting into any mischief. The Air Force is generally very well behaved, though, and but they are gainfully employed. RAF Police, yes, they keep law and order on the base, certainly in check.
And you were talking about Bomber Command, you know, with the 460, 462 squadrons that had such a substantial involvement during World War II. Effectively the only Allied force to be able to take the attack directly to Nazi German-occupied Europe from 1940 through to 1944.
Yeah, the attrition rate was incredible. Absolutely incredible.
And here we have the Air Force cadets continuing the traditions of those who serve. Wing Commander Stuart Mattner, can I thank you sincerely for your service and for joining us in commentary today for the 2021 Brisbane Anzac Day Parade. It's been a true pleasure.
Thanks, Craig. Great fun. Had a great time, and wonderful form by the Air Force continued today. Looking forward to seeing the senior service at play.
You betcha. And what a beautiful day it is for this year's parade as the Navy comes into view down Adelaide Street. So from the Air Force, we turn to the Navy, and the Royal Australian Navy Band is solely made up of members who are Navy reservists. They base themselves out of HMAS MORETON here in Brisbane and represent the Navy right throughout Queensland. The bandmaster is Mike Vaughan, who has deployed a number of times supporting Navy commitments overseas. Highlights of his career are performing at the 60th anniversary of the Battle of Crete and Anzac Day commemorations in Gallipoli in 2010.
I have to confess a naval connection. My brother is an ex-naval warrant officer.
Looking splendid in their crisp white uniforms, the contingent from HMAS Brisbane. The Navy has enjoyed a long association with Brisbane that dates back to colonial times when the Queensland Marine Defence Force was raised in 1883 to provide a local naval defence.
We had our own gunboat, the Gayunda.
And joining us in commentary from the Australian Navy is Warrant Officer Cole Scott. Cole, as you look at the crowd, you look at those marching, what's on your mind this Anzac Day?
Oh, look at Craig, it's very humbling, and even to be great to be back marching again this year after what happened last year, but it's fully expected what happened with last year with COVID. But I know everyone that I've spoken to are very excited and they're proud and they're keen to get out there and march today and commemorate what a great day Anzac Day is for us.
A sacred day effectively on the Queensland calendar.
Oh, absolutely, without any doubt, yes.
And as we look at those marching, we've just seen the Royal Australian Naval Communications Branch Association, or PAST, marking its 75th anniversary. The association was formed shortly after the Second World War. 2021 also marks the 100th anniversary of communications training at HMAS Cerberus near Melbourne,
yep,
where I understand you were an instructor, Cole.
I was an instructor down there for a number of years, yes.
So take us through the catalyst for you joining up to the Navy.
Well, as a young 16-year-old boy, I grew up on a farm in western New South Wales, or near Tamworth, and wanted to travel, and I thought, what a better way to do that other than the Navy, and never looked back.
The Navy women coming into view now. The Women's Royal Australian Naval Service was formed in April of 1941 for service in World War II. At that stage, women were not allowed to go to sea, so they performed a number of other supporting roles onshore to free up men for at-sea postings.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Craig. And the role they play now is exactly the same as all male sailors as well. There's no discrimination between the sexes these days. All the ladies do as much as the men do.
Yeah, at sea and on shore.
Absolutely, and in combat roles.
The Emmanuel College Highlanders coming into view, the pipes and drums sounding loudly in front of King George Square in Brisbane. They are an award-winning pipe band, have been entertaining crowds across the country since being founded in 1998. Behind the band we have HMAS Hobart Association, HMAS Perth Association and HMAS Brisbane Association all marching together. Just take us through a little of the history of the Hobart. There have been 3 ships to carry the Hobart name.
Yes, there has been 3 ships. The first one was a light cruiser in World War II. The second was a guided missile destroyer that served in Vietnam and also the Gulf War. And the third one is our current air warfare destroyer, which is one of our newest ships we have.
For the HMAS Brisbane, a very similar story. We're up to the 3rd of HMAS Brisbane, only commissioned a couple of years ago. We've seen the Corvette Association, the Vendetta Veterans Association as well, and the clearance divers coming into view down Adelaide Street. It's celebrating its 70th anniversary, the clearance diving branch. Of course, diving in the Royal Australian Navy started with hard hat divers pre-1920s. These days, the equipment is much different as members are tasked to deal with any explosive ordnance disposal or improvised explosive device, supporting the fleet with underwater repairs and counter-terrorism. It's just over 1,300 personnel have passed the course since 1951, with the unit receiving multiple unit citations and bravery awards, both in wartime and civil disasters. Clearance divers have served in all conflicts since Vietnam and more recently during the Thai cave rescue. The Navy have supplied members to the Special Air Service Regiment for counter-terrorist roles and now supply members to the 2nd Commando Regiment for counter-terrorism. They have also been present in Afghanistan for the entire duration with their expertise in improvised explosive disposal. Women have passed this demanding course fully operational, making clearance divers not only one of the most versatile units, but certainly also diverse. And the medal sets, I don't know if you noticed, but the divers, you can see that some are wearing the special duty parachute wing, which indicates, Cole, that they have passed the grueling Special Forces selection program.
Yes, they have, yeah.
And on the beret, the sandy green beret you associate with the SES, but instead of the dagger, it's the crown and anchor.
That's right, yes.
My brother's first ship was HMAS Vampire.
Might be able to see that parachute wing now on those of the Clearance Diving Association. And there is Commander Peter Tedman, a clearance diver, one of the first to be seconded into the SAS. Tedman led the first clearance diving contingent to East Timor in 1999. He was awarded a Distinguished Service Medal for leading a beach reconnaissance mission into a militia-held enclave in West Timor. As I understand it, Commander Tedman is the only Navy person to command an SAS squadron. And clearance divers were instrumental in opening up Moreton Bay and the Brisbane River after the 2011 floods. It's extraordinary work, and you think of the conditions that they work in, both underwater and on land, Cole.
Oh, absolutely. There's contingents been in Afghanistan, and they've been like over 3,000 miles away from the closest piece of water, but they're still, their expertise in explosive devices is second to none. So their roles is far and wide.
You mentioned that cave rescue in Thailand.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot credit how people would put themselves into that sort of danger, you know, in a rescue mission. That, you know, the peril that they were in.
From the clearance divers, we have the HMAS Sydney and the Vietnam Logistics Support Veterans Association, which was raised in New South Wales in 1965. And hear the applause of the crowd for those who have served as members of the Royal Australian Navy. I mentioned the Vietnam Logistical Support Operations. The association also includes civilian centre entertain troops. Example, Little Patty, I understand, is a member.
I believe so, yes, she's a member of that.
And the Tingara Association coming into view now. The Tingara, an Indigenous word meaning open sea. And it was quite the training establishment.
It was, yeah. It's all boys seamen. They are from a very early age, at the age of 15, which is no longer allowed in the confines of what the military can employ. But they did a lot of work. You know, they served on HMAS Sydney, Hobart, and Brisbane during the Vietnam conflict. They were on, you know, World War I in Sydney and Australia, and did seen battle when they sunk the German ship, the Emden. So they have a long history. And plus, Craig, I joined with the Tingara boys myself, so that's part of my history as well.
Yeah, and so Cole, you know, you've been involved in the Navy for, well, the better part of 40 years, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah, 41 now, yes.
Take me through a little bit of that history.
It's been rich in my eyes. The opportunity to travel, to see places, but to be involved with the men and the women and all people, facets involved with the Navy, even with foreign services. Working with the Americans, our close relatives, New Zealanders, Malaysians, Filipinos, anyone in the Southwest Pacific Oceans, all those people to work together in a way to achieve the common goal of whatever the task may be at that time.
They talk of the saying, join the Navy, see the world. Has that been the case for you, Col?
Absolutely. It was one of those things. I remember I saw a recruiting poster in my young days when I was still at high school. There was a picture of a sailor who was, I think they were taken in Hong Kong somewhere, and the person recruiting said, "What would you like to do?" And I said, "I would like to do that." And so, and the rest is history, as they say. So,
Coolangatta was always a very, very good recruiting ground for the Navy. One of my best friends was a commander of MORETON, and there were plenty of other families had sailors living, who were serving in the Navy.
Yeah, actually, Southeast Queensland is very rich for recruiting for Navy for the whole of Australia. We, on average, recruit, when I say we, Southeast Queensland, recruit around about 23% of the entire Navy's intake every year.
That is incredible, Cole.
Yeah.
So that history of Brisbane and Southeast Queensland being, still home to HMAS Moreton, but now supplying plenty to wear the uniform of the Royal Australian Navy. Warrant Officer Cole Scott, thanks so much for being a part of our commentary today for the 2021 Brisbane Anzac Day Parade.
My pleasure, Craig. Thanks very much.
Really appreciate it. Yes, we are live on ABC TV and online through abc.net.au/Brisbane. And down Adelaide Street, under blue skies overhead on this Sunday, Alan Callaghan from the National Servicemen's Association. You couldn't pick a better day for the tradition to return.
It's the most perfect day. It's warm, there's no wind, the trees are beautiful, the leopards in Adelaide Street. But the other thing, Craig, is the turnout of Brisbaneites.
It really warms your heart for those who have served, those who continue to serve, and their descendants who are here today to mark a very special Anzac Day in 2021. And the Royal Australian Artillery Band making its way down Adelaide Street.
Yeah, we really don't go in for pomp and circumstance, but our armed forces are such an integral part of the community.
And Brisbane is, of course, home to the Army's 7th Brigade, based at Gallipoli Barracks in Enoggera. And as you can start to see soldiers from 7th Brigade make their way down Adelaide Street, Major McLeod Wood can join us in commentary. McLeod, welcome.
Hello, Craig. Thank you very much for having me this morning. It's a great occasion. And on the screen you can see the headquarters of the 7th Brigade being led by Brigadier Jason Blaine, DSC, CSC. And here's some of the officers and the soldiers of the headquarters. The 7th Brigade was formed at Fraser's Paddock in Enoggera in 1915, and the brigade is deployed to the Middle East from 1915 through to the end of World War I.
And I think that's an important point to make, is that more recently there have been a number of deployments for the soldiers and units of 7th Brigade.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. So in the last 2 years, the 7th Brigade has deployed a total of 3,218 personnel in support of overseas operations, as well as national and domestic operations here in Australia.
The 2nd 14th Light Horse Regiment just making their way down Adelaide Street. Incredible history associated with this unit, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 2nd 14th Light Horse Regiment is now heading into its 161st year of service. The regiment is being led by Lieutenant Colonel Tom McDermott. And it's a regiment near and dear to my heart. I've served in the regiment for the last 2 years. It's been a fantastic time.
Who was the officer with the red cap? There was an officer there with a red cap.
I'm sorry, Alan, I didn't see the man with the red cap.
It's not a uniform I've seen.
And with the banners here, McLeod coming in behind the 2nd 14th Light Horsemen. Oh no, they are the 2nd 14th Light Horsemen.
That's right, they are. And there's the 2 divisions marching there, and we're just passing through the 2nd division.
From the Light Horse, now it's the Boxer that's their equipment.
Absolutely. So the regiment's just taken possession of the combat reconnaissance vehicle, which is an amazingly capable vehicle that'll carry it through for the next couple of decades in service.
And built right here, just to the west of Brisbane and Ipswich.
That's exactly right. It's a fantastic piece of local industry. I'm really looking forward for the soldiers and the officers to get their hands on it and use it.
And someone might have noticed the plumes and the slouch hat of those marching with 2nd 14th. Just a little bit of that history.
Yeah, so the plumes are worn by all Armoured Corps soldiers within the Australian Army, and they originate back from the late 1850s and 60s, and anecdotally it goes that the horsemen, to prove how good they were, used to ride up alongside the emus to pull the plumes off their chest.
That just shows their skill, doesn't it?
Exactly right.
The 1st Regiment of the Royal Australian Artillery.
So we've now got the 1st Regiment of the Royal Australian Artillery passing. That's commanded by Lieutenant Colonel James Groves. And this year will mark its 150th anniversary for the unit, with its A battery being the longest continuously serving unit in the Australian Army, which is an amazing achievement.
Isn't it ever?
So the 1st Regiment uses the M777 155mm howitzer, which provides integral fire support to the brigade.
And the 2nd Combat Engineer Regiment, although raised in 1999, can trace its history back to the Brisbane-based 7th Field Company, raised originally in 1915. What's their modern role?
Yeah, that's correct. So the 2nd Combat Engineer Regiment provides specialist engineering support to the brigade. So it provides mobility and counter-mobility for us when we are on land power operations.
And have been very active in more recent times.
Absolutely. So in the last 2 years, the regiment has deployed 478 people on either overseas or domestic operations. Most recently, they've supported the New South Wales Flood Assist with 104 of their members heading down there in the last couple of weeks.
Of course, the most recent disaster we've had in Australia. Followed by the 7th Combat Signal Regiment, making their way down Adelaide Street.
Yeah, so the 7th Combat Signal Regiment is being led by Lieutenant Colonel Michael King. And although the regiment was only formed recently in 2012, its subunits do have a deep history dating back to as early as 1948. The regiment's function is to provide communications and signals support to the brigade to ensure that we can communicate with each other to carry out the plans that we're issued.
And obviously deployed overseas in recent years?
Yes, they have. So they've conducted quite a few overseas operations in recent years, and also on domestic support operations. About 223 soldiers have deployed in the last 2 years. So here we have the 6th Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, as they are marching past. The battalion is currently led by Lieutenant Colonel Richard Niesel, and the battalion has been heavily involved in operations over the last 2 years. They've deployed approximately 722 people in support of our national interests. And of significant attention is that on the 1st November in 2012, Corporal Dan Kieran was awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions in Derapet in the Uruzgan province, Afghanistan.
Of course.
And that action occurred on the 24th of August in 2010. He was a member of 6RAR and MTF-1 at the time.
Yeah, so MTF, Mentoring Task Force 1.
That is correct. And interestingly, Brigadier Blaine, who's the commander of 7th Brigade, was the commander of that rotation.
Oh, so incredible history associated with 6RAR.
Yes, a very deep and incredible history from the unit.
6RAR, of course, famous in Australian history for the Battle of Long Tan.
And you talk of the modern movements of 6RAR. People would go back to Vietnam as well, where they were obviously involved in the Battle of Long Tan.
That's exactly right. And here on screen, Craig, we can see the 8th 9th Battalion Royal Australian Regiment marching past. The commander is Lieutenant Colonel John Eccleston. The 8th 9th Battalion is a motorised battalion within the Australian Army, and it was raised in 1973. Recently, the battalion has also had deep operational experience on domestic and overseas tours, deploying 527 people in the last 2 years alone. 450 of those were in support of Operation COVID Assist.
In support of COVID Assist, and that brings me to that the past 12 months and what that has meant for the operations of the Australian Army.
Yeah, absolutely. So the operations of the Australian Army have been very, very busy for the last 15 or 20 years, and in the last 2 years that's continued to be our current rate. It's been amazing to be able to support the Australian public in those roles, and also to be a part of the community and to give back, especially in our domestic operations.
So there's no longer a separate 9th Battalion?
No, so they were amalgamated, and they're now the 9th Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment.
Of course, the 9th Battalion might be on your mind as well. It was a member of the 9th Battalion who was the first ashore at Gallipoli.
Yes, I was a private in it.
There's a very deep history there, Alan, with these units, and it's fantastic to see them marching through the city today.
We're hearing the sound of the 8th 9th Battalion pipes and drums.
That's right, and they're playing Black Bear, and we hear the distinctive hoy as they go through on the march past.
And it is so important to keep those traditions alive, McLeod.
Yes, it is. I think the traditions are very important. They anchor us in something, and they provide us a steadfast resolve for what we're doing and why.
Well, that was what I used to wear in the Byron Scottish.
And here on screen at the minute, Craig and Ellen, we can see the 7th Combat Support Battalion. It's being led by Lieutenant Colonel Ross Thomas. So the battalion was formed in about 1997, and they have, since then, they've provided integral logistics support to the 7th Combat Brigade. The battalion has had a deep and extensive history with domestic and operational involvement in the last 2 years, and they've deployed 493 people in that time in support of the nation.
And when you talk of those logistics, there is so much behind the scenes that has to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
For what you do, whether it be here or abroad.
Yes, that's right. They have a very difficult role. They have been equipped recently with brand new vehicles, and they're an incredibly capable asset to the brigade and to the battalion.
So that is the 7th Combat Support Service Battalion. This is the 2021 Brisbane Anzac Day Parade.
Yes, His Excellency certainly would be looking him over professionally, having been a lieutenant in the Queensland University Regiment.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So he knows what he's looking at.
It certainly helps. Alan Callaghan, Craig Zonka and McLeod Wood in commentary with you today. And this is the headquarters of 6th Combat Support Brigade.
Yeah, that's correct, Craig. So here we have the contingent of the 6th Brigade marching through. It's being led at present by the commanding officer of the 20th Regiment, who is Lieutenant Colonel Seamus Armstrong. So the 6th Combat Support Brigade comprises 7 different units, and they provide integral combat support to the divisions and brigades across Army. So when I say support, what I'm talking about is things like intelligence, specialist engineering, policing, signals, and also surveillance and target acquisition.
And McLeod, when you reflect on your own history in the Army, what was the catalyst for you to sign up?
I had a very lucky childhood where my grandfather Jack, and his brothers had all served during World War II. So Jack on HMAS, a runner, 2 of them in the Royal Australian Air Force, and the other one in the Australian Army in the 2nd 23rd Battalion. So growing up, I had these role models, and I really enjoyed listening to their stories and being able to participate in outdoor activities and leadership roles. And that's how I basically combined the two to join the Army as an Australian officer.
You had your own task force.
Yeah. That's it, the joint interagency. Yeah, it was very good.
And your service here around the country, but overseas as well, give us an insight into where you have been deployed.
Yes, I've been very fortunate so far to have had 3 operational deployments, 2 to Afghanistan and 1 to Iraq. And then I've also supported Operation Atlas here in Australia for the 2018 Commonwealth Games. And it was it's a great time. You get to go overseas quite young, and you get to experience different parts of the world, and there's lots of things to be learnt and gained from it, and I really enjoyed my time. One of the best things is being given the privilege and the honour to command Australian soldiers, whether it be here in Australia, but especially overseas in conflict with the enemy.
As you say, you talk about it as an honour and a privilege, and more recently we've heard that Australia will withdraw its troops from Afghanistan by September. I think there's about 80 personnel who are there at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. So we still have a limited involvement in Afghanistan, and they'll be coming home shortly.
And for you, from the service that you performed, what were your takeaways?
So when I first went there in 2011, it was still a fairly conflicted environment. And then going back in 2013, I saw a big change, which was that the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Government were in far more control of the space that they were in, and it was really good to see the change. It was a stark change.
McLeod Wood from the Army with us in commentary as we see the associations come down behind the Queensland Light Horse Heritage Band, who you might be able to hear in the background. And from the 1st Armoured Regiment Association, we turn to the 3rd Cavalry Regiment Association, who served in South Vietnam from 1965 to 1972, and the 2nd 14th Light Horse Regiment Association. Again, a unit that can trace its lineage back to 1860, the oldest Australian regular army unit. Members of the 2nd 14th have seen active service from the Boer War through to modern conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq.
I had a few rides in vehicles like that one.
The Royal Regiment Australian Artillery Association. We have the A Field Battery Association leading things off. Began in 1871 in Sydney as a colonial gun battery. Served in Sudan, World War I and II, Malaya, Borneo, Vietnam, East Timor and Afghanistan.
Well, if I had done national service from home, which was Coolangatta, I would have been in an artillery unit. But because I was in Wollongbar, I wound up in the Byron Scottish Regiment.
It's all about where you're from, Alan.
Yes, it is. With a name like Callaghan.
The 101st Field Battery Association, raised during World War I as a howitzer battery. Served in Malaya and on 2 tours of duty in South Vietnam, the first in 66, 67, the second in 69 and 70. And they're followed by members of the 105th Field Battery Association. Originally raised in 1916 in Egypt, the battery served with distinction for the next 3 years of World War I, from Passchendaele in Belgium to Amiens and Villers-Bretonneux in France. And the 108 Field Battery Association, again, saw service in France during World War I. It disbanded in 1919, but was reformed as a CMF unit in 1928, and 21, I mean to say. It saw service in Vietnam in 67 and 68, supporting 2 RAR and 7 RAR during the Tet Offensive. Members have also served in Singapore, East Timor, and Afghanistan and Iraq. The Brisbane Boys College Pipe Band just look to be taking a breather as they come down Adelaide Street. Oh, there you go. Might be starting to hear them again pick up the pace, so to speak, as they come past King George Square.
They look and sound fantastic, don't they, Craig? The pipes and drums are a special part of any parade. I've always enjoyed marching up and down the square with the pipes and drums in support.
It's all about staying in step as well, McLeod.
Exactly right. So you should hear that big, deep drum beat every time your left foot hits the ground. And that's what they're listening to.
In fact, the Brisbane Boys College Pipes and Drum Band can trace their history back to 1940. When Lance Corporal Robert Laurie introduced bagpipes to the Toowong School's cadets. Rating, Surveillance and Target Acquisition Association. I guess you could describe these gentlemen as the eyes and ears of the battlefield, McLeod.
Absolutely. They work hand in hand with our ground forces to identify and locate the enemy. Being a reconnaissance specialist myself, we work hand in glove with organisations like this to be able to pass information in a timely manner to our commanders to make sure they have the information they need to make good, clear decisions.
Technology would have changed the role significantly over the years.
It most certainly has. It's meant we're able to pass more information more quickly to our commanders to help them make better decisions.
When you say reconnaissance,
Flying overhead, just heard the roar of a Super Hornet over the Brisbane CBD. Drowning out even the pipes and drums
Absolutely.
of Brisbane Boys College.
That's a great sound to hear overhead. It's a very reassuring sound, especially when you're on operations.
Here we have the Royal Australian Artillery Association of Queensland.
when you said reconnaissance, what did that involve?
So it depends on what platform you're using. For myself, it's using armoured vehicles.
Ah, yes.
For the target acquisition group that went past, it may have been the things now such as drones or unmanned aerial vehicles.
Ah, so it uses a variety of techniques and equipment.
Absolutely.
Ah, thank you.
We see the Sapper Association, along with those from the 1st Field Squadron and 17th Construction Squadron Association.
This is what my dad did. He was a sapper.
Well, the saying is follow the sapper, isn't it, Alan?
Yes, but not too closely.
The construction squadrons have a really important role in Army, and that's to build facilities in an expeditionary nature for us. Without them, we wouldn't be able to establish the basis of life support that we need to conduct our missions.
Well, I understand during the Vietnam War era, members were named the Moon Men for their ability to clear sand dunes, fit roads and buildings as well.
That's exactly right. I'm always amazed by the engineers and how they can turn nothing into something.
The Australian Water Transport Association began in World War II to get troops and supplies to shore in small ships and landing craft. In fact, it proved to be an outstanding tactical change by defence chiefs at the time. And the Royal Australian Survey Corps, coming past now, formed on the 1st of July 1915, granted its royal status in 1948 for services rendered during World War II. And the Intelligence Corps served in all theatres of war of World War II, with small groups embedded with our allies, of course also in Korea, South Vietnam, Southeast Asia, the Pacific and Australia. Even today they are deployed at various locations around the world. Our services rely on that pinpoint accuracy for targeting, whatever the type of operation. Therefore, as you were talking about, McLeod, that intelligence-led operating.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, the Intelligence Corps have a very active part in most of our units, with members of the Corps being posted to support each one of our units.
The Royal Australian Signals Association, their banner coming into view. For the past few years, the ranks have been growing. We now see about 40, 50 members of the Corps marching behind the banner. Their motto, swift and sure. You might have noticed the colours and badge showing Mercury, the winged messenger of the gods.
They perform an integral role on the battlefield as our signals units to make sure that our headquarters and our units are able to talk to each other at all times.
And the City of Bundaberg Drum Corps. Again, keeping that beat for those marching today. This band was formed in 1956. And they hold various fundraisers to ensure that they can be here each and every year for the Brisbane Anzac Day March.
It's amazing to see the community come out and support on such a scale, and to know that the Army can be a part of and is a part of that community.
We see 5 RAR Association here. 5 RAR would serve 2 tours of South Vietnam. its return to Australia, 5 AR was linked with the 7th Battalion to form the 5th and 7th in 1973. But then again in 2006, the two units were delinked.
That's right, they were. And I've had the pleasure of serving with both the 5th and the 7th, and then the 5th, 7th Regiment, Battalion in Darwin from 2009 through 2013.
Separately and together.
Yes, that's right.
The 6th Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment here. During the Vietnam War, we mentioned 6 RAR received a presidential unit citation from the US when members from D Company participated in what has gone down in history as the Battle of Long Tan in 1966.
Yeah, an amazing action fought by some incredibly brave men, soldiers and officers from the battalion.
Over the past 14 years, the battalion has been deployed to also East Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan. There's the 7th Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment Association. Like we were talking about, the 5th and 7th did join forces at one stage.
Yes.
Now separate again. Based in Adelaide these days. And we know of 8, 9 RAR as they were.
As they marched past earlier, that's correct. And here you can see the 8, 9 RAR Association followed by the 9th Battalion Association.
9 RAR was raised in 1967 to serve in Vietnam. It counts among its members the former Governor-General, Sir Peter Cosgrove, who commanded an infantry platoon of 9 RAR, in Vietnam, and for those efforts awarded the Military Cross. The 9th Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment.
Served in Malaysia, Rhodesia, Cambodia, Somalia and Rwanda.
And here is 5-7 RAR and their association, like we were talking about. Once linked.
Then delinked.
Yes. And mechanised infantry.
That's correct. It's going to be very exciting for the infantry unit over the next couple of years as the mechanised pieces of equipment get updated.
The 1st Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment, raised from the 65th Infantry Battalion at the end of World War II, currently based in Townsville, 1 RAR. Honours earned for operations in Vietnam include the US Meritorious Unit Citation, Vietnam Cross of Gallantry, and a unit citation for gallantry following the Battle of Coral Balmoral in 1968. And the current Governor-General David Hurley, a former commanding officer.
Yeah, that's correct.
Of 1 RAR.
Yeah.
Now, I understand they have a mascot as a Shetland pony.
Yes, they do.
A little bit of trivia for 1 RAR. There's the 3rd Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment Association. And the 4th Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment, serving in Malaysia, Borneo, South Vietnam. Followed by the Brisbane Grammar School and their marching band. Again, a part of the Anzac Day tradition. They performed at Anzac Day for over 30 years.
You'd have to say if you put them together with the North Mackay band.
I know the school bands, incredible contributors, aren't they?
Yes,
They are for such a long period of time as well.
Yeah.
To the legendary 39th Battalion Association here.
This is my old battalion.
And we've got...
So you can see with the 39th Battalion a little bit further up Adelaide Street, Alan. 2 Queensland World War II veterans with the unit today. George Turner, turned 100 in January this year. At age 20, George enlisted in the Australian Army Militia, and after basic training, he marked his 21st birthday just a few weeks after arriving in New Guinea as the Japanese were bombing and strafing Port Moresby. George had several near misses during these bombing raids. On one occasion, in fact, a bomb exploded beside the trench he was in, killing the soldier beside him. And for George, a very special moment this is in 2021. He has his grandson Robert and great-grandson Harrison beside him. Both are also in the Army. Robert a corporal in the Royal Australian Corps of Transport and in the 35th Water Transport Squadron based out of Townsville.
There's some amazing family lineage there. Great stories.
You can also see Max Kerwin. Max joined the 39th, completed basic training, but was blocked from departing for Port Moresby after it was discovered he was only 16 years of age.
You got to love his enthusiasm.
In fact, the story goes that his mother almost dragged him away by his ear.
You can see it.
Despite repeated but ultimately failed attempts to link up with his unit, Max then joined the 39th Band to ensure that he remained part of the battalion. Max and George are the only surviving original members of the 39th who are in Queensland. And what a privilege it is to be able to say thank you for your service. The battle honours of the 39th are being carried by cadets from the Southport School on the Gold Coast, which has custodianship, you might say, of the association's banner.
39th Battalion. Association, Association.
There's David Belair's leading the 39th Battalion. They were the first to engage the Japanese on the Kokoda track on the 23rd of July in 1942. The 2nd 14th Battalion in shot now. Members, you could describe them as more heroes from the Kokoda track. It was raised in Victoria. The battalion first saw action in the Middle East from early 1941 until it returned to Australia about a year later. But after retraining near Yandina, the battalion first engaged the Japanese in 1942 in August on the Kokoda track. It was for his action there that Private Bruce Kingsbury, at the cost of his own life, was awarded the Victoria Cross. His was the first VC awarded in the South Pacific Theatre of War. The St Andrews Pipe Band. Formed in 1945. Notice the kilt of the St Andrews Pipe Band matching the kilt of the Cameron Highlanders. Marching together, we have the 31st Infantry Battalion Association, along with the 2nd 31st Battalion and 31st 51st Battalion Associations.
Special Operations Command Australia. Action areas include Malaya, Borneo, Vietnam,
And
Somalia,
Special Operations
Rwanda,
Command Australia.
Cambodia, East Timor, Afghanistan, and Iraq. They include battle honours from Afghanistan. Ben Robert Smith, VC, Mark Donaldson, VC.
The Australian Special Air Service Regiment Association. The Queensland branch wearing their sandy berets. You could say our two Tier 1 elite units, because behind those members of the SAS, you'll see those of the Australian Commando Association here in Queensland. Serving with incredible distinction. You'll notice the difference in colour of the berets from the sandy to the green with the commandos.
Yeah, to the deep green, that's correct.
The Australian Army Training Team Vietnam Association and Young Diggers. This was the first Australian unit into Vietnam and the last out. It is also the distinguished honour of being the most decorated Australian Army unit. 4 Victoria Cross recipients, those being Major Peter Badco, Warrant Officers Ray Simpson, Kevin Wheatley and Keith Payne. Keith Payne led his company to safety under heavy fire and organised the rescue of many wounded soldiers. And the Australian Army Training Team Iraq Association served in northern and southern Iraq from May 2004 until the 1st of June 2008. Over the 9 rotations from May 2004 to 2008, they meaningfully contributed to the rehabilitation and reconstruction of Iraq. The 161st Reconnaissance Flight Association just going out of shot in Adelaide Street. These are members of the Australian Army Aviation Association, otherwise known as 4As. Established in 1968, the Corps has grown tremendously in the past 50 years, in both equipment and manpower, with more operational deployment than any other Army unit. Consists of brigade headquarter, 3 unique regiments, a training centre, and a capability development and governance organisation. The Army Transport Association, raised in 1903. The Australian Army Service Corps, renamed Australian Corps of Transport in '73. So important for supplying troops by sea and land, and also supplies.
Absolutely, they form an integral part of any one of our missions, to be able to provide, whether it be fuel, water or rations to the combat force.
And the 85th Transport Squadron, Vietnam Association here. Otherwise known, Alan, as the Roadrunners.
Roadrunners, yes, I was just seeing this. Yeah. One question I would raise, what will happen to all these banners? You know, some of these units are getting very small.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Alan, and it depends on what their lineage is to the current serving units.
Yes.
In many cases, they'll be stored with regular serving Army units for safekeeping.
Ah, good. I know that the RSL has a whole lot down at New Farm in their storage.
Yeah, that's one of the other options as well, is whether it be associations, RSLs, or even museums to take charge and care of the banners.
Yeah.
Those medics coming through now, the Army Medical Corps, we just saw those from the Dental Association Corps as well.
That's right, we don't go very many places without our medics. In fact, we go nowhere without them. So they are an amazing asset, and we like to have them very close by.
And it's amazing what you can have in a field hospital in 2021.
It is. It is the expeditionary capabilities that both our Army, Navy and Air Force all hold. It is an amazing capability that we use to deploy around the globe to support, whether it be our own forces or other countries during humanitarian disasters.
Were the dentists good at drill?
I guess it depends on your definition of drill.
And the first Australian Field Hospital Association. Served in Vietnam 1968 through to 1971. The unit was responsible for treating battle casualties and men suffering from tropical disease, as you can imagine, in that environment in Vietnam. 40 nursing officers served with the unit, which was the only unit to have female staff on establishment. And in bright red, it is the Redland Ladies Drum Corps. Formed in 1987 in Cleveland. They accompany the Defence Force nurses at every march. The Redland Ladies, they have become a fixture at Anzac Day commemorations. Association formed in 1985 with retired personnel interested in fostering and continuing the Corps' spirit after having served in every theatre of operations Australia has been involved with since the Boer War. And RAME, the Royal Australian Electrical Mechanical Engineers Association, formed in 1942 at the height of World War II. The Corps were established to provide maintenance and repair to the Army, effectively fixing anything, anywhere, anytime.
That's right, Craig. They're a great group of humans. Being an Armoured Corps officer myself, the fact that these guys can repair just about any damaged vehicle, bring it back into a battle-worthy condition and get you back in the fight is an amazing capability.
At one stage, the message was to send Bluebell when you were referring to a RAME craftsman.
That's right, and it still is. An incredibly handy group of individuals to have around. And again, much like the engineers from earlier, they can pretty much create something out of nothing.
In 1986, His Royal Highness, the now late Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, presented the Prince Philip banner to the RAME Corps. He held the position of Colonel-in-Chief of RAME since 1959, and his genuine enthusiasm and, of course, interest in the Corps will be sorely missed.
I think also we should pay homage to the small people holding the numbers.
Yes, you can see.
Look at them, look, right up the street.
This young child holding number 82.
Yeah, and there's another one behind, there's another one further up. They've been going past without our noticing.
I think, Alan, the community support and engagement has been fantastic.
Oh,
and it's just great to be a part of.
Isn't it wonderful? Look.
The Army Catering Corps, you're only as good as what's in your stomach.
And that's exactly right. But when the field kitchen's set up, it is, the ladies and gents do really love it. Get a fresh food.
And you're looking at the red berets of the military police.
Yeah, look, they form a really integral part of that combat support that we're talking about with the 6th Brigade. So whether it be general policing, whether it be traffic control, they are, or even in the prisoners of war, dealing with prisoners of war, it's great to have them around on the battlefield.
And the officer training unit.
Skyville, yeah.
Unit raised in 65, Alan, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, and National Service Unit. This trained all the officers for National Service.
1,871 officers I have here, graduated from Skyville.
Yes.
Through what was a pretty demanding, as I would understand it, 22-week course. 130 graduates obtained the rank of Lieutenant Colonel or above, with 13 brigadiers.
There was a pretty high attrition rate too.
And let's take a listen to the National Servicemen's Memorial Pipe Band in front of City Hall in Brisbane. Followed by the National Servicemen's Association, Alan.
Yes, this is, if you look at our ranks, they're starting to thin because national service was finite and are not making any new NASHAs, so inevitably we will disappear. But we were called up and we served.
Sent to Waco for most of that training, wasn't it, Alan?
Yes, that's where I did mine. And then I went from there to the Byron Scottish Regiment and then the Morton Regiment. All of them gone. This is not good.
But it's important we remember. That's what today is about. 287,000 men were drafted serving in Korea, Malaya, Borneo, Vietnam and PNG. The blue berets that you're seeing now are marking members of the Australian Peacekeepers and Peacemakers Veterans Association. Australian service personnel have been involved with peacekeeping operations for a number of years now. Behind them you're seeing the skull and the slouch hat on the flag of the Vietnam Veterans Motorcycle Club. Formed in 1990 on Long Tan Day. The club colours are inspired of the Australian movie Stone, you might remember, from 1974. And once more, you hear the sounds of the Kai North Estate High School marching band. It wouldn't be Anzac Day in Brisbane without these students making their journey down.
Yeah, I promised to give them a wave.
Let's take a listen. Sounding superb.
That is not a small band.
Not at all. And it is remarkably difficult to play the trumpet as you're marching.
Absolutely.
Let me guarantee you that.
Their drill is very good.
And the Royal Marines Association here, its origins can be traced back to 1664. Today the Royal Marines are renowned as an elite commando force. They've fought in every war since conception.
And we're the first unit really to come to Australia with the first fleet.
The Green Berets recognise the Royal Marine Commandos, formed in 1942 in World War II. It's now the primary unit feeding one of Britain's Tier 1 Special Forces teams, the Special Boat Service. The Royal Marines, as you would imagine, have a number of VC recipients within their ranks.
And here comes this Jeep again. And that's what you need for the peak hour. twin machine guns.
I thought you were going to say how narrow it was, Alan, so you could slide through the traffic.
What's the problem, officer?
The British Ex-Service Association here now. Members of the group are from all three services of the UK Armed Forces. There are members marching today whose honorary colonel or colonel-in-chief was the late Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. And how important it is for the association recently using the power of social media to reach out to some of its more recent veterans, increase its membership, keep those traditions alive for years to come.
Yeah, social media has really increased awareness and the ability to connect, which has been fantastic.
And as you look down Adelaide Street, McLeod, what goes through your mind on Anzac Day?
I quite often spend a lot of time thinking about my grandfather and how his service during World War II on HMAS Runner must have been, fighting in great battles like the Battle of Leyte Gulf and Coral Sea. And then how he must have spent the last 40 or 50 years of his life, you know, contemplating his own service and that debt to the nation.
And as we look at the French Veterans Association, it's acknowledging
there are many members of the Allied forces.
Absolutely, and I think for the viewers back home, not a lot of people might be aware that New Caledonia, which just sits off our northeast coast, is still a part of France, and there are still French troops based in New Caledonia that we interact with on a regular basis as a part of the Southwest Pacific Step-Up.
And going back to World War I, there were about 80,000 French that fought alongside Anzac forces at Gallipoli.
Yeah, it's a very deep and rich history with France, and as we saw before, the British.
Indian veterans just marching past, and now to the Rhodesian Veterans Association. Troops served in the Boer War, originally World War I, World War II, more recently against Robert Mugabe's guerrillas. The association also represents police, national park staff, the Rhodesian Light Infantry,
the Selous Scouts, and also some of the SAS veterans.
Yeah, the Selous Scouts. Effectively, they're SAS.
Yeah, exactly right. I think it's amazing to see so much support from the Commonwealth nations to come out on Anzac Day, to be remembered and also to take part.
We reflected on the French contribution to the Anzac campaign in Gallipoli. The Indian veterans that marched past as well. A figure you might not know is that 15,000 professional soldiers of Indian origin fought alongside the Anzacs as well during World War I as part of the British Indian Army. This is the City of Brisbane Pipe Band.
Did you know that there was a Newfoundland battalion at Gallipoli?
I didn't. I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
And now we talk about the South African Military Veterans Organisation of Australia. Extensive service in both World Wars. Over 230,000 South Africans volunteered for service in World War I and played a key role, particularly to gain control of what was the German-held colony, which is now Namibia. The Polish Ex-Servicemen's Association, a worldwide body established in 1945, headquartered out of London, with branches in 20 countries on 5 continents. The Australian Association was raised in 1947, with members serving in World War II on every front of the war. In fact, the Polish made up the 4th largest Allied force in World War II.
Yeah, some amazing stories of heroism coming out from their ground forces and also their air force.
Well, in many respects, their independent airborne division were some of the silent and unseen who were dropped into occupied Poland. And that's what today is about, honouring those who, even against all the odds, charged ahead in that fight for freedom.
One of the things I find fascinating, Craig, as you look at all these banners as they go past, it really sparks a little piece in the back of me that wants to find out more about them. What did they do? How did they contribute?
Yeah, let this just be the start of that journey of
Exactly
discovery.
right. Exactly right.
Same with the Hellenic Ex-Servicemen Association. They've served in the Australian, Greek or Cypriot Armed Forces, members of the association. The 2nd Anzac Force aided in the defence of Greece and Crete in 1941. Greek forces have also served in the Middle East during World War II, Korea, New Guinea, and the Solomons and Vietnam. And the traditional dress you can see as well, scarlet cap, black tassel, a kilt, stockings with black or red garters and black clogs.
Have you ever seen it when they changed the guard, the honour guard?
No.
Very high stepping. Seriously.
Something to behold though, Alan.
It is, yes.
Coming into view down Adelaide Street, the Republic of Vietnam Armed Forces Association of Queensland, who served with Australians in South Vietnam from 1962 through to 72. And after the fall of Saigon in 75, many sailed to Australia as refugees to start a new life. And Alan, as you think back, you saw the National Servicemen's Association march past a little earlier. You said the numbers are dwindling. How can we keep that memory alive?
Well, it applies to a lot of these veterans organisations. The best we can do is things like this. We've got on record to make sure we preserve the banners and we preserve the traditions. One of the ways to do it will be through the schools, adopt a unit. That would be one way to do it, and to look after the banners and the history. That'd be my suggestion.
Like the 39th Battalion Association has done with TSS on the Gold Coast.
Yes, yes, yes.
Effectively the school becoming custodians of the banner,
Yes.
marching with them on Anzac Day.
Yes.
There are huge numbers of people who are lining the streets of Brisbane, paying their respects. You might be able to hear the applause for the Republic of Vietnam Armed Forces Association of Queensland. And about to march past the Governor is Tok H Queensland. Its origins can be traced back to the battlefields of Belgium during World War I. It was on these fields that tens of thousands of young men lost their lives. Early in the war, it became evident that something had to be done for those returning from the front lines. Something that would take their minds off the tragedy and destruction that was surrounding them on a daily basis. And it was then that the Queensland-born chaplain, Tubby Clayton, in December of 1915, set up a rest centre called Talbot House in honour of one of his closest friends. These days, Tok H members are dedicated to helping disadvantaged children, people with a disability, and they also run services for the elderly.
It's not generally known that Anzac Day originated in Brisbane and was adopted throughout Australia almost instantly.
And descendants of veterans of all conflicts proudly marching to pay their respects to their ancestors that have gone before them and served in the name of the country.
Well, there's one new recruit.
Referring to a baby in a pram that you've just seen, Alan. We see a little teddy bear being held by one of those marching with the descendants of veterans, young and old, who can be here today. Just seeing out of screen now descendants of the Rats of Tobruk Association, Queensland.
11th Brigade, World War II, 26th Australian Infantry Battalion.
And it's important that they continue to tell the stories of those who have come before.
Yeah, and I think that's the importance of that family participation and encouragement towards Anzac Day, is to learn the history, to pass it on, and to spark that desire for a little bit more knowledge about the day.
And like you said, for some, that family history in the military leads them to a life of service as well. Whether that be for 1 year, 2 year, whether it becomes a career, it doesn't matter how many days you serve. It is to say that you have served in the name of the country.
That's exactly right. And whether it be 1 day or it be an entire lifelong career, that day's service is just as valuable.
I think, too, that we have to pay a tribute to the people of Brisbane for what we're seeing. The turnout, the parade is absolutely phenomenal, and they really have honoured all those who have served and all those who have died.
Yeah, Alan, the community support and involvement has been fantastic.
Isn't it? Yeah, look at it.
And I know the Defence Force greatly appreciates all of that continued community support.
And when you reflect on the fact that it was only the second time in the parade's history that it couldn't be held last year. 100 years ago, it was cancelled for the Spanish flu. last year for COVID-19. But we can be here today, and that is a true privilege indeed. The Manly State School Senior Fife Band, as you can see, marching past the Governor-General. And now youth organisations. But I guess start to ingrain the idea of service to the community, led by Boys Brigade, which began in Scotland in 1893.
And I think the youth organisations also instill a sense of belonging and really help with building teamwork amongst young people. It's a great outlet.
The Girls Brigade, a similar story, an international youth organisation with, of course, a strong membership here in Queensland. And Scouts, founded in 1908 by Baden Powell. Not only do they provide volunteers for the parade, but they're starting off that journey of what it means to participate in the community.
Well, I have a photograph of myself as a Boy Scout with my head bowed at the dedication of the Coolangatta War Memorial.
Oh, yes, of course, Alan.
Yeah, it was taken by Fred Lang. Yeah.
Were you a scout?
Yes, yeah, well, I was a cub and then a scout.
What about for yourself, McLeod?
Yeah, I actually was a Boy Scout back home in my hometown of Camperdown, and I do remember supporting the dawn services and Anzac Day with the Scouts.
See, there you go. We talk about those early years and then what it may lead to.
That's right.
A life involved in the military for McLeod Wood from the Army, joining us in commentary today on ABC TV and online through abc.net.au/Brisbane. And the Girl Guides, saluting the heroes of those who have served. The Girl Guides celebrated their centenary in the Sunshine State in 2019. And the parade marshals, these volunteers, including ex-service personnel, who run the Brisbane March on behalf of the RSL's South Eastern District. Without their continued hard work and the crowd reacting with a rousing reception for the parade marshals, led by Chief Marshal Earl Jennings, it is a true credit to the entire organising committee that we can be here today, marking Anzac Day with the traditional parade. Applause and a wave from the Premier of Queensland, Anastasia Palaszczuk. The Lord Mayor of Brisbane, Adrian Stritter.
Thank you very much for your attendance, coming along and acknowledging the service and sacrifice.
And it's quite incredible that we have been able to be here today when you think of the events of the past 12 months. A huge crowd lining the streets of the Brisbane CBD. To Alan Callaghan in commentary from the National Servicemen's Association. What a day. Beautiful blue skies above. You couldn't wish for anything better for this Anzac Day in 2021.
No, you couldn't, and what an honour it is to be able to comment on it.
McLeod Wood from the Army, thank you very much for your service and for being a part of our commentary team.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much for having us. It's been an absolute privilege and an honour.
And thank you for joining us on this Anzac Day, 106 years on from the landings at Gallipoli. We pay our respects to those who uphold the Anzac legacy. You would have heard the expression that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And it is so important that we remember the sacrifice and service of the many men and women who have served our nation. You will be able to watch back the parade from later this afternoon on ABC iView, but on behalf of the entire ABC team, thank you very much, and lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Never in flames. This is the calm we breathe. This is a feeling too strong to contain. Still it aches like down by the sea.